Alan Jackson is the one who crosses him. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, turn those notification bells on, share it if you would like. We would love to add you and make you a duckling. Okay, so the first thing that Alan Jackson wants Bukhenik to say is he wants Bukhenik to say that Proctor is the lead investigator. Bukhenik will not say that Proctor is the lead investigator. He will say he is the case officer, he is the case agent, he's a facilitator, but that he will not say that Proctor is a lead investigator. Bukhenik says we follow the evidence, unbiased. We make sure that they gather appropriately and objectively. Stop and shop bags and red Solo cups are not appropriately. It's just not. So the fact that you can say that with a straight face is ridiculous, in my opinion. He said that if people didn't have integrity, they wouldn't be on this case. So according to Bukhenik, everybody that investigated this case has integrity, because if they didn't, they would have been off the case. What about people losing their jobs before the case is over? Proctor lost his job. I would say that's somebody that doesn't have integrity is off the case. But he still wants to act like Proctor has integrity and honor. Get out of here. And he talks about, we speak for the people who cannot speak for themselves. We do our best to conduct with honor and integrity and truth. Bias doesn't affect this. Really? Honor, integrity, and truth. Those, according to MSP, is how this case was handled for John O'Keefe. And what I have seen in the case in finding justice for John O'Keefe has not been honor. There has not been integrity. And there has not been truth. Then they get to talking to about Tully is Bukhenik's supervisor. He says you need to supervise a case, especially proper to keep the competency, integrity, and the accuracy and professionalism. That's what Tully was supposed to be doing, and Bukhenik was supposed to be doing. Making sure that everybody underneath them was keeping competence. Was it keeping their integrity? That they were being accurate and professional. Point to where those 4 things happened in this case. If you're an anti, show me, even if you're a free Karen Reed, no matter what side you are, show me where there was competence, integrity, accuracy, and professionalism. Because I can show you a whole bunch of where that isn't happening. Jackson finally gets Bukhenik to say former trooper Michael Proctor. Tries to say Proctor handled the case with integrity and honor. He doesn't believe the investigation was tainted by Proctor. He does try to downplay Proctor's role in the case, said he had more a significant role, but not a major role, because what Bukhenik thinks a major role is 51% or more. And they have a team, so he didn't do 51% or more. But significant and major are two different things to Bukhenik. And I bet if we did a percentage chart on things that Michael Proctor was in charge of compared to everybody else, it would be 51% or more. I'm just saying. Then they then they go into Proctor signed affidavits for Verizon, car records, cell phones, search warrants. He's Buchanan says he doesn't recognize any of these search warrants. And then he says that Proctor is an on an affidavit, but not a search warrant. So I'm not really sure about that. But it's if he doesn't recognize them, are these actual search warrants or are these forgeries? Did these search warrants not ever actually happen? We just pretend they did, but they never got granted or something. I don't know. Then he talks about that the Canton PD video, that he was the one that delivered them to Proctor, and then another CPD video, um, uh, the video about Canton Library, another report on Proctor's recovered evidence February 13th and February 18th, and a video and lab sent info in March 14th, 2022. Those are um, things, the Ring camera, the telematics system, Google geofencing, Guarino's phone reports. Proctor secured the cell phone of John O'Keefe, but when he testified, he said that Good um, got the cell phones, not Proctor. But Proctor reports that he took possession of them. Now, did Good give them to Proctor, and that's when he's saying it? But basically listing all the things that Proctor had his hands in. He says he can't validate some of these search warrants. Don't know why. He talks about Canton recused due to the perception of bias, but there wasn't actually bias. Just because it could look like there's bias, that's why they recuse themselves. Then they go into talking about January 29th, 2022 at 10:41 a.m.-ish, thought someone who threw cocktail glass. So that's what Buchanan ultimately thought around 10:41-ish on January 29th, 2022, is that somebody had thrown cocktail glass during a physical altercation of John O'Keefe. Um, he says that he interviewed the homeowner, no separate witnesses. They didn't search 34 Fairview. There's no crime log to account for the people. He never called crime scene investigators, crime scene services to process the house or the property. He also was like, "Well, did you search the property or did you search the house?" And he's like, "What house?" "Sir, the house we've been talking about in this case, 34 Fairview. What other house would we be talking about?" But he, like I, like, rolled my eyes so much when he's like, "What house are we talking about?" Like, he tries to play dumb so much in this while he's sitting up there being smug, and it irritates me. I don't know how the jury is taking it, but I don't like it. He talks about John O'Keefe was dropped off on the lawn. Um, he interviewed Brian Albert, Matt and Jim McCabe. He just took the witnesses' words that John O'Keefe never went into the house, but he talks about witnesses can lie and create alibis. Well, why didn't you think that anybody at 34 Fairview was doing that? You have to verify things. Why didn't you verify that? You just took their word and decided not to investigate and just take their word for it. When you should have verified it and then been like, what they said was true, or we found out what they said was a lie, but you didn't investigate it. So you don't verify crap. And apparently, witnesses can lie and create alibis, but you don't think that they lied. He was shown pictures of the clothes on the floor, because remember in direct, he had said that they were on the foot of John O'Keefe's hospital bed, which they were not. He says in the picture, he doesn't see injuries to the knee. He talks about that he used a evidence paper bag the size of a lawn bag, and everything was put in the same bag. The clothes, they were soaking wet, and that they just left the clothes overnight in an office on butcher paper on the floor of that office for many days. The clothes were eventually so this was from January 29th, 2022. Those clothes were put in the office on the office floor or butcher paper on the office floor, and then the clothes on top of that butcher paper that was on the floor. Then the clothes were bagged February 4th, 2022. No idea who bagged and tagged after they dried. There's no evidence logs or and he thinks that writing a report about it, about who bagged it or tagged it, and writing it on the bag itself would be redundant. Why do we need to write what everything is and who did it on the evidence bag and then also in a report? So that we can know who bagged and tagged it. Because maybe if you had written it in your report, you would know it. Say, "I got the clothes. I bagged them. I gave them over to Trooper Proctor to tag them and log them into evidence." So then we know if they don't ever get tagged or into evidence, we know who had them. I'm not saying that's what happened, but that would be a great report. Instead of just saying, "Well, on the evidence bag, it says that these were found here." We don't need to write the same thing down multiple times. Yes, you do. You're being lazy, and I bet you do it in every other case. The 3rd, 4th, and the 10th, they documented evidence, and then there was no report done on the drive-by, and he doesn't remember writing a report for the 3rd, the 4th, or the 10th when he was there collecting evidence or Proctor was collecting evidence. Um, at those evidence collections. Yeah, because they just drove by and saw these taillight pieces in the lawn. Very tiny pieces of taillight. And then later when they went or Proctor went back out, he found big pieces. They were finding little pieces, but they missed big pieces. Then they get to talking about if Bukhenik knew um, Chief Berkowitz, um, and Higgins. But he talks about he knew them professionally. Um, Canton Chief Berkowitz drove by and saw the taillight piece first. And then that's because Canton PD was recused. That's why Bukhenik went out there to collect it because Berkowitz couldn't touch it. He just reported that he drove by and saw it so that they could come out and get it. I don't know. How do we know that Berkowitz didn't put it out there and then was like, hey, there's taillight? We don't. Evidence collections were until November of 2023. And so that's the end of day 12. Then we go into day 13. Bukhenik is still on cross with Alan Jackson. He says that the evidence is in a 40 to 50 feet area that was excavated, which is the area where they were told that John O'Keefe was. The evidence is speaking to them, right? And they can taste it and touch it and smell it. He talks about they get theories of the case. And like we develop theories based on the evidence and all of that. And then Alan Jackson asks him about the word theory. And so you have theories that you come up with. And Bukhenik, once again, wants to play dumb. He wants to say, I don't know what the word theory means. English is my third language. Sir, you just used theory like 2 times, like 10 seconds ago. So how are you using theory in the correct way? And now you need a Webster's dictionary to tell you what the word theory is because English is your third language? Give me a break. Like, it's such BS. And he just wants to smirk and smug and have his arm just resting up on there like everything is cool. He testified recently. I'm gonna go off a little bit. He testified recently in the Walsh case, which is another case where this man is alleged to have murdered his wife, I believe. And if you go and look at that, now I don't know if it's because he did this case differently in the Walsh case or if it's because the edge is not as thick as the one in the small courtroom that they're in, but he sits like this in Karen Reed's trial. In the Walsh case, when he testified just a few days ago, so shortly after he testified for Karen Reed retrial, he is sitting with his hands like this in front of him and testifying. He's not laid back, lackadaisy. He's sitting with his hands in front of him, and he looks like a professional in that one. And the way he testifies is very different than the way he testifies in Karen Reed. So if you get the chance to go watch Bukhenik testify at another trial, the Walsh case, and this one, you will see drastic differences in how it's being done. And Proctor worked on the Walsh case too. So he's probably having to talk about some of Proctor's doings in that case. I don't know if Proctor and them messed up that case, but I know they were looking into it. But if they can do the Walsh case correctly and they crossed all their T's and dotted all their I's in that case, why didn't they do it in this case? It makes you wonder. So back to Buchenek's testimony here. Um, After he doesn't know what the word theory means, Alan Jackson asked him, well, when you were locating that evidence, couldn't you have taken out your cell phone and taken a picture of it since you didn't have crime scene people there? Like, couldn't you have taken a picture of it? Well, I guess I could have. Or could you have called them out there and had them take a picture of it? And then he said, well, couldn't you have done cross coordinates or measured it or done latitude and longitude? Buchanan says he doesn't know how to do cross coordinates. Um, so no photos and no measurements of anything when he goes out on February 10th, 2022. Um, he filled out the evidence bag, but cross coordinates would be something easy. You could do a pinpoint in your phone. You could have also measured from the piece of tail light to the flagpole and the piece of tail light from the curb or from the fire hydrant to kind of get an exact where that piece is. If you measure this much this way and this much this way, this is where it's going to be. Or if you measure this much and this much, that's where this piece is going to be. But no, we're not going to bother to do that because who needs to know in what way that these things scattered? Nobody needs to know that. We literally have accident reconstructions who need that information. And things could have been done better in these reconstructions had they done their job properly. Um, Even though he filled out the evidence bag, they don't actually get booked into evidence. The only time that anybody ends up knowing about these pieces or this piece is when they show up at the lab March 14th, 2022. It's written on the evidence bag that they were collected on February 10th by Buchanan, but there's no evidence sticker logged on the bag. It just goes from filled out on that to keeping it around to they sent it to the thing. What they should have done is they should have filled it out, logged it into the evidence records in the evidence room. Then they should have had to check it out to send it to the labs. And who checked it out? Who checked it in? There should be a log of everything. Who touched what when? Because then we would be able to say, "Oh, Berkowitz never touched this," or "Proctor didn't touch it," or "Buchanan got it, but after he, filled out the bag and handed it over, he never touched it again." That's why these things are so important because it would allow it would make it to where the defense couldn't say, "How do you know? Y'all don't have any of this logged. You don't know who touched what, where it was, when. You were lazy and sloppy with this." Because the defense wouldn't have as many arguments and many abilities to poke so many holes. And there wouldn't be so many unanswered questions if they would have just done their job. They would have wiped out a lot of the defense's case and the defense's points. They wouldn't have had those had they had done their job. But they didn't, and that's why we're here. It says Proctor submitted them to the lab. Um, or it might have been 2023, not 2022. Proctor submitted these to the lab February 11th. Proctor's piece of evidence, which was the length of a dollar bill, they didn't see. And so this is where Buchanan says that he didn't see this taillight piece the size of a dollar bill on February 10th. So Buchanan went out there, got something. Proctor went the very next day and he saw something that was the size of a dollar bill. So it was a big piece. Buchanan should have been able to see that piece too on February 10th, you would think, but he didn't. And then on February 18th, Proctor found another piece that is larger than 6 inches. And Buchanan says he never saw those either. There were no pics this of the February 10th, February 11th, and February 18th findings. There were no pictures or location data for them, um, or reports about it. Um, Buchanan says that there was still a bit of snow on the 10th. And then they talk about, Higgins making a phone call at 1:35 and another one at 2:30 in the morning. He asked him, "Did you know that or asked Buchanan if he knew that Higgins made phone calls at 1:35 in the morning, and then if he also knew about the one that he made around 2:30-ish to Brian Albert." Then he reads Higgins and Karen Reed's texts. I am not gonna go through those. They are cringy. He is trying to get clarification on if Karen Reed wants something serious or not. Karen Reed is just, to me, having a little fun, like, just being like, it seems like Karen Reed just wants to know that somebody likes her and thinks that she's cute or hot because you're hot. Um, and wants the validation that somebody does want her because maybe she feels like John O'Keefe doesn't want her. And so Higgins is letting her know, "No, I think you're hot. I would be with you." But I don't think Karen Reed is looking for much more than that. Um, she might be also trying to um make John jealous, and have a little envy or something, but They're just really cringy. I'm not gonna go through them. It's just they're in there. Um, Buchanan never sought to get Higgins or Albert's phone, even though they were making phone calls at weird hours of the night, and they were there at 34 Fairview when this supposedly happened. Um, in one of Higgins' things, Higgins said the body was hidden in, like, a snowbank, but didn't pay attention to anything past the snowbank, or he couldn't see past the snowbank, but says that when he was there, he couldn't see past the snowbank, and so with John O'Keefe's body being hidden in the snowbank, Higgins couldn't see it because he couldn't see past it. I don't know. That's just something that Higgins said. Um, Buchanan says he thinks it is important to interview witnesses, but it can take a while sometimes. Um, they interviewed, well, first, Buchanan told Proctor in August of 2022 to interview Ricky D'Antano. Ricky D'Antano was the driver when Ryan Nagel, his girlfriend, Heather Maxson, went to go try to pick up Julie Nagel from 34 Fairview that night. And they were the ones that ended up coming from opposite sides of the road to both turn down 34 Fairview when right before Karen Reed was dropping John O'Keefe off. And so Proctor was supposed to go interview him, and Buchanan told him to do it August 2022. That, even if he would have interviewed him in August when Buchanan told him to, January 29th to any time in August is about 7 months later, because 'cause we're basically into February almost. So 7 months to go interview a driver that would have seen Karen Reed and John O'Keefe? But he actually doesn't interview Ricky D'Antano until September 2nd, 2023. So over a year and a half later from the incident, Ricky D'Antano was interviewed. It was supposed to be 7 months, but Proctor didn't do it until a year and a half later, 13 months from the time he was told to do the interview. That is crazy. And Buchanan, as troopers or former Trooper Proctor's supervisor, you should have said, "Where is the report or where is the interview of Ricky D'Antano? I told you to interview this guy back in August, and I haven't seen this interview yet. I have no report on this. Go do it. Make sure Proctor was doing his job, and you didn't. You didn't even notice for 13 months that he hadn't interviewed this guy you told him to. 13 months from when you told him to, over a year and a half from the incident. It's just insane. That's why he's like, he thinks it's important to interview witnesses, but it can take a while sometimes. These are key witnesses that could have possibly witnessed this event or had very detailed information, important information during that time. Not important enough to interview them for over a year and a half. Um, he knows that that the Alberts rehomed Chloe, and Bukhenik is the one that went with the Commonwealth's he's gonna be a rebuttal expert to go and get the molds of the alleged Chloe to do a comparison on John O'Keefe's arm. That's something that they just recently did. Bukhenik is the one who went to go do that. Oh, my mic fell because I wanted to move my leg. Um, but Chloe was rehomed to someone with the last name of Riley. Then alleged Chloe ended up with some new owner, and there are some vet records, but there's no transfer or adoption papers. The dog Chloe has a new name. Her name now is Cora. There's no documentation of a name change. They don't mention they don't mention how they really know. Based on some vet records, um, but there's no mention of a chip either. A chip would have really been helpful to figure out, oh, the Alberts had her chipped, in case she ever ran away, or needed to be found. And so we verified the chip to make sure it was the correct dog. That would have been one of the easiest ways. But this dog has been passed, supposedly, if this is actually Chloe, has been transferred to whoever the Alberts gave Chloe to somebody else. And somehow all the vet records connect. I don't know. We're probably going to get more information about that when rebuttal comes along. Um, and they talk about these molds or how they know that this is Chloe. Um, so far, they haven't proved that it's Chloe, in my opinion. You can believe what you want. Then Alan Jackson goes into reports and how long reports took to write. And, is important to write reports close in time to when things actually occurred. And Alan Jackson asked Bukhenik, do you know that there are 20 reports that it took more than 100 days to write? 20 reports, 100 days. Also, did you know that 11 reports took more than 300 days? That 3 reports, more than 400 days? 4 reports, more than 500 days? And the longest delay on a report is 581 days. So if we add all of those up, it's going to be 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 38 to 30, 38 to 39 reports that were 100 days or more. So almost 40 reports that took 100 to 581 days to write. How are you going to remember all the details you need to know after 581 days? You're just not. You're not going to have the memory of it. It I mean, like, some of these things took a year to a year and a half to write after something happened. They didn't write a report on it. It took them a year to get to the report, and they're like, Well, we're busy, and in a case like this, like, we don't always have time to write the reports. We would like to be able to write it contemporaneously with it, but, shit happens. It's lazy, sloppy, and they do not care. And you know what? I'm writing in one of my daughter's old, um, spiral notebooks for this trial because it had a lot of blank pages in it, but I hadn't written on her pages that she actually wrote on. So I'm gonna share this with you guys. The first quote is, "Be strong because things will get better. It may be stormy now, but it never rains forever." Oh, it's flipped, but yeah. Then the next one is, "Always be positive," such as if you trip down the stairs, say, "Wow, I got down those stairs fast." It was just funny. She wrote this. This was a pad from her 5th grade year, her 5th grade year in school. She's now fixing to be a senior, or she is a senior now. So, yeah, that was a quote that was in here. I didn't touch it because I actually messaged it to her and showed her because I'm like, "You should read this because this might apply to you now." But you know what? It might be fitting to this case. We need to try to be positive or find some positives or understand that it's stormy now, but it doesn't rain forever. This case just seems like it's a storm. It has been a storm. It's been a blizzard. All right. So then we go to day 14, another day that Buchanan is on the stand. Um, so AJ continues with this cross. They talk about, didn't you know that there was a plow driver that said at about 2:30 a.m. there was no Ford Edge, and then right around 3:30 there was a Ford Edge there. And Buchanan says he didn't investigate that. Um, he asked he asked, "Did you know that the Alberts owned a Ford Edge?" I don't think he knew that. He also talks about the Ring video footage at 12:36 a.m. when Karen Reed returned from 34 Fairview that night, and that there was a search warrant that Proctor got and a key log, and that there's no evidence showing that Karen Reed had access to the Ring footage. They also showed login access times, and that there was no evidence that Karen Reed logged in to the Ring app or ring.com. There's no evidence proving that Karen Reed accessed the Ring. And the reason this is important is because this means that there is no evidence showing that Karen Reed deleted any videos off off the Ring video camera. She couldn't have done it. Even though Peggy O'Keefe wants to try to say, "Oh, they were up there, they were probably doing things, they were probably deleting video footage," or they want to try to put it on, "Oh, the reason that these are missing is Karen." But Ring issued a thing, and according to those Ring records, their logins and things like that, there is no evidence to show that Karen Reed had access. But there is evidence showing that Massachusetts State Police, or Proctor, opened the Ring app on John O'Keefe's phone. Ring does have a log and data that says that MSP Proctor accessed John O'Keefe's phone and accessed the Ring app. So it doesn't show that Karen messed with anything, but it shows that Proctor got into it. Now, does that mean Proctor deleted anything or did he just look at the videos? Don't know. But it's interesting that Proctor accessed it. And Proctor does, I think in trial 1, talk about there's a video maybe on the Ring camera that he saw that is now all of a sudden gone. Well, if Karen Reed didn't have access to it and you're the last one that had access to it, did you delete it? Did you delete the very video that would just prove that Karen Reed did this? Now that video just doesn't exist? It's interesting. They go into now they switch topics and they go into John O'Keefe's arm. And Alan Jackson brings up the picture of John O'Keefe's arm and he says Bukhenik now claims that he didn't see a bruise on the arm. He saw bruising on the hand, on the back of the hand, which, if you remember from his direct, he said that there were bruises and lacerations on his arm. Now he has changed it on cross when he has shown the picture to say, no, I don't see any bruising there. And this picture is what I saw, which is an arm with lacerations and no bruising. So that's twice that he has changed something. He changed where the clothes were after seeing proof, and he also changed that there was no bruising on John O'Keefe's arm. They go into talking about that Karen Reed's vehicle was seized between 4:12 p.m. and 4:16 p.m. on January 29th, 2022 from Karen Reed's parents' house in Dighton. But the report says that her vehicle was seized at 5:30 p.m. and that he eventually learned that that was not 5:30 p.m., that Proctor got it wrong in his report, and Bukhenik never had Proctor correct it, and he didn't correct it either. They just they didn't wanna fix the vehicle time after they knew it was wrong. They just left it. Like, so you're trying to convict on data that you know is false because you know that that's not when you seized it. Some say that was an error, Scribner's error, whatever, and people um, that he got it wrong. This is one where a lot of people are like, "Oh, he said that it was at 5:30 and it can't be a Scribner's error." I would have to see the way the report is logged because if the report just says that they seized the vehicle at 5:30 p.m. and they don't say we arrived, we got the vehicle at this time, and then we got back to Canton PD at this time, I would want to know that. But if it just says we had her vehicle at 5:30 PM, I could see where they could write 5:30 PM because they did get back to Canton around 5:30. Or even if it was they seized it, that they were like they remember 5:30 getting back or something, and so they had 5:30 in their mind, so they put it on there. So, I don't have as big of an issue with this. I think it's sloppy and lazy that they didn't fix it, and if nobody pointed it out, that would just be the way it was testified to, as well as if there wasn't any video footage of it, we would just have to believe it. But we have video footage of it being seized and it arriving, so that's how we know that report's wrong. But without video footage, we wouldn't know that that's wrong, and we would just have to take their word for it. Then they go into Bu Buchanan, whatever, that there that he got in trouble, and he was disciplined because of an internal investigation that was done, and that they had sustained findings on Buchanan of failure to have quality control of an investigation and of those under him lacking of lack of supervising, and that he also got disciplined for the the evaluations, the quarterly evaluations that he did, at least on Proctor, that they were not accurate. And his punishment was losing 5 vacation days. Big whoop-de-doo. I don't know how many vacation days they actually get or if they're allowed to roll over, but 5 vacation days, whoop-de-doo. He can make it up on overtime. It's not a punishment. It's laughable. Now let's go into the text messages that got him into trouble and showed that he is failing to of the control the investigation and control the people that are under him, and then he's not supervising properly. There is an MSP group chat, Massachusetts State Police group chat, has texts that included Buchanan's supervisor, and Proctor. The defense shows him a picture, and it's a picture of young David Yannetti, one of Karen Reed's attorneys, and Buchanan LOL'd that photo. Um, and then Proctor put going through retarded client's phone. Proctor also says, I hate that man. I truly hate him. And that there are no nudes so far. That Trooper Moore was in this group text as well. And Trooper Moore disliked the no nude comment. And the defense is trying to play it as he disliked it, like he was disappointed that there were no nudes so far. But I could also see it from a standpoint of he didn't like that comment. Like that he's liking this comment, not disliking that there hadn't been nudes found. Like I don't know that Moore was hoping that there were nudes found and he's sad because they're not, or if he is hating the fact that Proctor said that. and he's disliking that. It could be read two ways. That is a understanding that I could understand. Buchenek's explanation of his behavior is not one that I could get behind and understand. Moore's, he could explain it in two different ways. The defense can just, say it this way, and then Moore could say, "No, I disliked that comment. I didn't like that he said that." And defense can be like, "You were sad that he didn't find nudes." I could see that one. Buchanan, on the other hand, he did a thumbs up to the going through client's phone. And he says that he was just acknowledging it and he never realized that it said retarded. I don't buy that. We're not Then why didn't you acknowledge every single thing that he said? Like, do you acknowledge texts that often? Or is that you liking it? That you're glad he's going through the retarded clients or he approves of this. He thinks it's funny. He's laughing it up about the photo of David Yannetti. But, he says that he never stopped Proctor from behaving this way and that he took no actions to try to get Proctor to stop. Like, hey, don't make those comments. Like, you can't be talking about somebody like that, doing what a supervisor should be doing, supervising and making sure that your people underneath you are being professional. Because, you said that the investigation was professional. Um, then he says that Proctor handled the investigation with integrity. And he says, yes, I think Proctor handled the investigation with integrity. And then he says, the investigation was handled with honor and integrity. He says that he wasn't trying to encourage Proctor's behavior. He never, and then he says that he never viewed the internal investigation on Proctor. He didn't look at the findings that were found on Proctor when Proctor got fired or Proctor got put on leave, unpaid leave. He didn't look at them. As his supervisor, he did not look at that. I don't believe it. Why would his supervisor not look at what he was in trouble for? He knows. He knows exactly what it is, and he's read it. The whole department has read it. But if he says that he hasn't read it, then Alan Jackson can't question him on it. So he has to say he didn't read it so that he doesn't have to answer any questions on it. Then they talk about, you know, the text they don't have integrity, honor, or professionalism. He says that they weren't appropriate. It took forever for him to get to that point because he kept saying, no, Proctor handled this case with integrity. Proctor did this. The investigation was handled with honor and integrity. And he's like, is that text show integrity? Does that text show honor? Does that text show professionalism? No, no, no. Do you think that text is appropriate? No. Then they go into the second part of where Buchanan was investigated or disciplined. And that is, he wrote in his peer review for Proctor that Proctor displays professional demeanor, composure, dignity, and respect during the performance of duties and interactions with the public. This was what he wrote about Proctor's oral and written communication skills after that text chain. The text chain happened August, and then when he did his peer reviews in October, which would encompass that August timeframe, because it's a 90-day peer review that happens, quarterly review. And he he rated Proctor on his oral and written communication skills a 4 out of 5, exceptional, that he handles himself with professional demeanor, composure, dignity, respect during the performance of his duties and interactions with the public. Okay. Then he also wrote another part that was a 5 out of 5, the best you can get. And it was outstanding about Proctor. Proctor's investigation ability. Bukhenik wrote for this 5 out of 5 outstanding that with this high profile caseload, with a lot of eyes and pressure from externally, since the first day of the investigation, he handled this case with competence, able to investigate this case with utmost professionalism, thoroughly, and with strict integrity. And Bukhenik stands by those statements to this day. He does not think that he wrote false peer reviews, false evaluations. He thinks that what he wrote about Proctor on his peer reviews for Proctor's evaluation for the quarters, that those are true statements. But he was disciplined because the internal investigation said, this is bullshit. You did not write an accurate evaluation about Proctor. This is not what his evaluation should have been. Basically, you lied about Proctor. I'd love to know if he's ever given a bad evaluation. Um, then they go into that he thinks that Proctor has a First Amendment right to make the comments that he made. That Proctor is allowed to say that somebody is a retard as in his official capacity as a Massachusetts State Police trooper. That he is allowed to call somebody a whack job. See you next Tuesday. It is First Amendment right to say, as a member of the Massachusetts State Police, that I hope this defendant just offs herself. It's his First Amendment right to say those things. Guess where you do not have a First Amendment right? At work. As a police officer. You do not have the right to say whatever you want when you want. Nope. But, I mean, if you want to get technical, he has the right to say it. That doesn't mean there's not going to be consequences at your job. He's not gonna go to jail for saying these things, which is what the First Amendment is that he can't go to jail for saying any of the bad things that he said, but he can get fired, and there is consequences for it because he cannot talk like that. It's ridiculous. He's like, "But he has a First Amendment right." Sir, he's not being threatened to go to jail over this, so his First Amendment is not at question here. It just it was just really I was just like, "What did he just say?" Did he really just try to justify Proctor saying all this horrible stuff about Karen Reed to his high school buddies and to the Massachusetts State Police coworkers? It was his First Amendment right to say those things, even though it's unprofessionalism. It's unprofessional. They go into, and I'm not sure if this was, I don't know if this was part of voir dire that they did of Buchanan because they wanted to go into seeing if he understood about you really didn't view anything on Proctor being disciplined, and you didn't know about, this person knew this person and Proctor knew this person who knew this person, and they're all related to people at 34 Fairview. Um, he just was like, "No, I didn't know any of that stuff." Or there were rumors, but those rumors weren't true, all that. But, they go and interview on February 10th, 2022. They interview Chris and Julie Albert. Proctor tells Buchanan before they go and interview him that that Proctor knows Chris and Julie Albert. And but he didn't actually find out how the families knew each other and how much Proctor actually knew them until like July of 2023 when they were sitting in court one day for one of the pretrial um, conferences or hearings from the first trial. Then they get into a video of Higgins. Now, these videos are new for this trial because Proctor didn't hand these over during the first one, even though he had them. They were kept from the defense. And they are videos of Higgins' Jeep pulling into the Canton parking lot with a plow attached to his Jeep at around 1:25 a.m. And I want it noted that there is blue text on the bottom as the timestamp. And then Higgins is seen walking inside of Canton down like office hallways and stuff like that. Higgins is in the same hoodie as he was from when he was at the waterfall and drinking earlier. Then there is um all these videos of Higgins has blue text on the bottom. They are motion activated, and the videos do jump from different time periods. Then at 1:34 a.m., so he arrives at 1:25 a.m. At 1:34 a.m., Higgins is back outside from going into the office, and he's back in the parking lot at 1:34 a.m., and he looks like he is on the phone, or he at least has his phone held up and it's, like, lit up. Is it lit up like this, though, because it looks like it's just lit up white. Maybe he's listening to a voicemail. Who left him a voicemail? We don't know. You know how we would know? If he didn't destroy his SIM card and his phone and put it in 2 different bags and throw it on a military base. But Higgins was on the phone or checking a voicemail at 1:34. Now, in the motion to dismiss, Judge Beverly Cannoni wanted to put, well, we don't know what he's doing on that phone. We just see him holding a phone to his face, but we don't know if he's on the phone. Are you kidding me? Like, I was thinking by her, the way she was describing it, is that maybe the phone was like this, but no, it was like this. Because I could see it. Okay, maybe we don't know here. Is he doing voice to text? Is he texting somebody? Is he on speaker? Like, what is he doing? But it's like this. Seriously. Then we go into, um, and the snow is coming down pretty hard from the looks of it. Then we get into a video where I see a vehicle move in the very top corner, and I see him move that vehicle. He says that he moved like maybe 2 cars or went there to do administrative duties and move some cars because of the weather and not wanting them to get stuck or them being able to be accessed. I don't know. That's what Higgins said in trial 1. Higgins has not testified in this trial, which is why we are using Bukhenik to get this in, because he is now seemingly the lead investigator or the case agent or the case officer since Proctor's off the case and no longer a trooper. Buchanan gets to come in and be everybody for the Commonwealth. I'm sure Buchanan loves that he just gets to take crap from everybody. And then he opens 2 truck doors to 2 different vehicles. It looks like he got something out of one of the vehicles, like maybe a duffel bag, and then he also eventually grabs, like, maybe what's like a snow broom or something, and those things go into his Jeep. But he opens and shuts, these different car doors. He's got one of the truck's headlights on. Eventually, he puts his on, and then we see him leave at 1:45:52 AM. Uh, so he was not there for very long. He was there for 20 minutes or so based on the video footage that we have. I don't know if he was there longer, don't know where he went afterwards. Um, Also to do with his texting that they discussed earlier is that Higgins got he used extraction software. I don't know if he used like Celebrite or whatever he used, which he shouldn't have used because you're not allowed to use that for things that aren't investigative. You did that for your own personal use. But he extracted just the texts between him and Karen Reed. He did not extract his whole phone. He did not hand over his whole phone. He just cherry picked text that was like, hey, here's text between me and Karen Reed. I thought you should have these. And he says that he had a talking to with Higgins that said, everything in here better match up because if it doesn't, we're going to have problems. I don't know if that was actually said, but because these texts matched what was in Karen Reed's phone and other things and John O'Keefe's phone and whatnot. This little tiny extraction of this thing, of these text messages only, they decided not to further investigate Higgins' phone. You have him doing weird things and making phone calls at 1:35 and 2:30 in the morning. You have him at Canton PD after he has been drinking, doing weird stuff around the police department for 20 minutes, and he has been secretly messaging Karen Reed behind John O'Keefe's back. And you don't wanna look into this guy? Okay. You also have a video of him being held back by Chris Albert and signaling to John across the waterfall in surveillance video. You do not wanna look into this. It's just Karen Reed. The tunnel vision was on Karen Reed. Don't look anywhere else. When they should have looked into it. Maybe Higgins didn't do anything, but they should have investigated it to clear him. Whether it's to clear him or to see if he's actually the person that should be looked into, you need to look into it. Because not only when you look into other things, it can also exclude that person. You didn't even investigate it. You didn't investigate anybody else other than Karen Reed. That's biased and it's tunnel vision, and you cannot do that in a case. They then move to and talk about the inverted Sally Port video, that it's a mirror image. Bukhenik says it still depicts what's actually happening. It's just reversed. It's a mirror image of reality. Well, it is if you tell people about it. And in the first trial, you didn't tell anybody really about it. You were just okay with them kind of thinking that left was right and right was left. That the driver's side was the passenger side and the passenger side was the driver's side. There was one small comment that I don't know if it just got skipped past because a lot of people don't talk about it. I talked about it in when I broke down the timeline of this case as a summary. Um, that they somewhat touched it, but it really was not clear and clarified until Alan Jackson brought it up on cross in the first trial. But they talk about this inverted Sally Port video, um, that it is missing footage and that they're on 1/30, 2022. So January 20th, 2022 at 11:08:59 AM, Karen Reed's vehicle, you can see that there's a video camera angle that is on that passenger taillight, and it's pretty clear. And you can see Berkowitz behind the vehicle. You can also see that Karen's taillight is busted at this point. So by January 30th, her taillight was busted. Don't know how, but it was busted the way it looks in the pictures that we get from February 1st. January 30th, it looks exactly the way it does in the Sally Port pictures. So if they have a view like that on January 30th, 2022 at 11:08 AM, why is there not that same footage for when her car was there on January 29th. We have that angle, but that angle is very blurry and it's basically like black and gray and you can't see anything. So why is that image clear on the 30th but not the 29th? So that's just missing footage. Nobody knows where it is. Um and so it's clear. Um the video from this is the distorted image on January 29th at 5:07 PM is distorted. And there is I think it's a white timestamp with a blue outline is what I believe on that one. It could be just the way that it was glaring in the camera for people to see, but that's what it looked like. I don't know if it was a blue text like the other ones. So the timestamp on it might have been different. That's why I wanna notice the timestamps because the colors of the timestamps and their location on all these surveillance videos has been very different. There are some with yellow, there's some that are on the bottom, there's some at the top. It's all different, depends on what day and who touched it. And then they show the video the way it should be, where it's not it's the right way and the timestamp is backwards, but this is how it would actually look in reality if you were to pull the car in the way it should have been. So that was Jackson's cross-examination. Hank Britton gets up on redirect and they he says, y'all never took a detour when y'all towed the vehicle, right? Y'all never went to 34 Fairview. You were always behind the tow truck. So you didn't happen to go drive by 34 Fairview to drop off some taillight pieces, right? And Buchanan says, no, we never went to 34 Fairview. Um, says, okay, you arrived with Karen Reed's vehicle to the Sally Port at 5:37 p.m. That he never saw Proctor handle taillight pieces. Um, talks about he heard questions of did I hit him? Could I have hit him? That's why he wanted to look at the thing because he had heard could I have, did I am. I don't think he heard that I hit him, I hit him. Um, that he wanted to interview witnesses and that most first person information from them directly. Um, they're accurate. McCabe's and Brian Albert says that they were separated at Jen McCabe's house. Um, there are no videos of these interviews. Like nobody has body cam footage. They didn't go down to Canton PD and sit in an interview room where it could be video or audio recorded. Um, Buchanan didn't think that there's a reason to look inside of 34 Fairview because he says he verifies because people can lie, but he didn't verify if John O'Keefe went into the house or not. He just took their word. He didn't verify it. Get the receipts. Make sure you can back up that statement because it gives them more credibility. But now it just looks like you were avoiding investigating. They keeps talking about he verifies what people tell him, but no, you didn't verify anything that the people at 34 Fairview told you. that he was not struck by glass, or he went from being struck by glass to now thinking that it looked like a car accident and that force to generate a head wound and abrasions on the arm. He interviewed Karen Reed at her parents' home. Karen Reed's dad stayed in the room with Karen Reed when she was being interviewed. Karen Reed was calm and stoic and poised. She had her laptop. He never said anything about John O'Keefe in the home of 34 Fairview. Says he would consider new information if it came out tomorrow. No, you wouldn't, because you've been shown plenty of information that you haven't investigated. Um, and then says that February 8th, 2022, 3 people told him that the "I hit him, I hit him, I hit him." Um, Whitley, Daniel Whitley, Karen Reed was asking him, he knew that Karen Reed was asking Whitley if John O'Keefe was still alive, that Karen Reed and John O'Keefe got into an argument, and that there is a grass stain on the left glute of his pants because that's where he landed. So that's why he got the grass stain, is because he landed on his left glute. Sir, if he landed on his left glute, then he would not have the impact to the back of his head. Um, Hank Brennan oddly says, "Did you know about," he's supposed to be asking if it was Guarino, who he has called to the stands 3 times at this point and has said Nicholas Guarino. He says Grantuco or Granticchio, which apparently was somebody that was in his Whitey Bulger case or some other case that he worked on, and he got those names mixed up. Like, okay, wrong case, dude. But that was just a weird thing that he got Guarino's name wrong. Um, then we have Recross, where he's like, "Do you know if those stains are grass stains? Like, how do you know that those are grass stains? Also, could you get a grass stain on your pants if somebody dragged you?" And he was like, "No, you would have stains to both sides." What's interesting though is when we get to what those stains are look like or supposedly are when it comes to the labs, they talk about them being like blood and stuff like that, or some other stuff that they're like reddish brownish stains. Um, Somebody said it looked like some other people I've seen people say it looks like motor oil or something. I don't know. But he says grass stains, that is not what the lab called them. And when you look at pictures of them, it doesn't look like grass stains, but they do to him apparently. But he's not an expert in this. Um, he also asked, could you lose a shoe if you were dragging somebody? Because, John O'Keefe lost a shoe. And he said because he lost a sneaker, that's how they knew it was a car collision. But could you lose a shoe if somebody dragged you? He also mentioned that you did at one point interview Higgins, right? And that you interviewed Higgins at Higgins' lawyer's house. and that Higgins had lawyered up and had a lawyer with him. Now, usually you do not hold the fact that somebody has a lawyer against them. Like, they cannot say, "Oh, Karen Reed hired a lawyer, that means she's guilty." But Karen Reed was being charged with something. Higgins knows he's not being charged with anything, in my opinion. And Higgins hasn't really been investigated, but Higgins has a lawyer. Higgins' lawyer was actually at court in trial 1 with him. If he comes to testify, will Higgins in trial 2, will Higgins' lawyer be there again? He's not the one on trial. He hasn't been charged with anything, but he's having a lawyer. Is it smart for him to have a lawyer? Yes. And I think Higgins having a lawyer, to me, shows that Higgins thinks that maybe there's enough for them to investigate him, that maybe he should have been looked at. And it shouldn't surprise him to be looked at, even if he was innocent. Just like when, things happen and they go and interview the boyfriend or the ex-boyfriend, and they may get a lawyer, but some know that even though they're not the one that did this to their ex-wife or ex-girlfriend or their girlfriend or their current wife, that they always look at the spouses and the boyfriends and stuff like that first. So it's not unusual for them to look at that or look at more than one person. So I think by Higgins lawyering up, it could be because he knows he needs to be lawyered up because he's done something, or that they could possibly investigate him as much as they're investigating Karen. But I don't know what he had to worry about because everybody had his back. So it was just interesting. And they did not look into whether or not Higgins wanted to have a confrontation with John O'Keefe. They're like, we had no evidence that John O'Keefe wanted to fight Higgins. Okay. Or that Higgins wanted to fight John O'Keefe. Well, there's some footage that maybe suggests otherwise. There's the "Where you at?" or "You coming?" text from Higgins to John O'Keefe. There's the "Did John O'Keefe find out? Did he not? Did while they were drunk? Did somebody say something? Or when they were being drunk, did they get into an altercation just by being drunk and guys and something came out and they're just being stupid? You kissed my girl or whatever. Like, it could have happened. And so that was the end of Bukhenek's testimony. Several days on the stand, and he was smug, evasive, tried to act like he didn't understand English sometimes, kept talking about how this was done with integrity and honor. It just was not great. You should go look at it yourself. I suggest upping it up to 1.5 or even higher because he speaks so slow. If he would have spoke at a normal pace, it probably wouldn't have taken so many days to get his testimony out. But he was slower than molasses when he spoke and answered questions. He couldn't answer directly questions. He had to think, he had to try to maneuver around the question and not answer the question or come up with some weird remark. Let's see. Then I'm gonna talk about the clips that were kinda played, um, would be after his testimony, but it was actually the beginning of the next day. But clip 18 is from Dateline from October 18, 2024. Karen Reed says, "Good or bad, I'm never breaking up with you," is what John O'Keefe told her. And then clip 19, which is supposed to be a contradictory text or contradictory thing, because they're trying to say she contradicts herself all the time. In the ID discovery on June 15th, 2024. So this clip was actually done before the last one, but they're playing it after. That says that I don't think Karen Reed says, "I don't think that John O'Keefe knew about the Higgins text, but I don't know if he would act strongly um to them." Like, she didn't think that John O'Keefe would act strongly if he found out about it. I don't know if I agree with that. As jealous as he was of the plumber coming over, I think he'd be pretty upset, especially with it being a guy he knew. But she says that she doesn't know that he would act strongly, but he probably would have broken up with her. So those are the 2 clips. And that is the it for Yuri Bukhenik in the Karen Reed retrial. Like I said, go and watch, if I can find a link to Bukhenik's testimony in the Walsh case, so you can see how different he is in these 2 cases. It really makes you wonder to do a comparison. So I will try to link that in the description box, and I will see you guys next witness. Bye.
Loud little ducky coming through, speaking truth, unabashed, calling out the liars, debunking falsehoods with a blast. I ain't afraid to say what's real, won't ever hold back. Gonna shake the system up, turn it all off track. I see through the smoke, the mirrors in the disguise, expose their hidden agenda. No more room for their lies. The truth is my weapon, I won't let it be concealed. I'm the voice for the voiceless, no longer gonna yield. In a world full of deception, I'm here to set it straight, bringing justice to the forefront. Won't accept their twisted fate. They may try to silence me, but my voice will still prevail. A sparking revolution, it's a truth-telling tale.